You're listening to today's inspirational message on the Proverbs with Kurt Bjorklund.
It says in verse 11 that good sense makes one slow to anger, and it is his glory to overlook an offense. And then a couple times in this chapter, again, we see this idea of slothfulness. Slothfulness, verse 15, cast into a deep sleep, and an idle person will suffer hunger. Whoever keeps the commandments keeps his life, but he who despises his ways will die. And then verse 24 says, the sluggard buries his hand in the dish and will not even bring it back to his mouth. And so the two things here is that it's to our glory and for our good to control ourselves, that is to be slow to anger, to overlook an offense, and to invest ourselves, not to be a sluggard. The ESV says slothfulness, actually, let me start not with that, but with the good sense. The ESV says good sense makes one slow to anger, and it's his glory to overlook an offense. One commentator says one gains glory by giving up a common means of protecting it, which is argument. William McCain says this. He says, the virtue which is indicated here is more than for a forgiving temper. It includes also the ability to shrug off insults and the absence of a brooding hypersensitivity. It contains elements of the toughness and self-discipline. It is the capacity to stifle a hot emotional rejoinder and to sleep on an insult. Harry Ironside says, a man of sound judgment and discretion has learned to pass lightly over offense and seeing insults, which would goad the one who is bereft of wisdom to an intense indignation. So do you overlook offense? Do you have control of the emotional side of your life? Because Proverbs 19 tells us that that's wise. And then it tells us that it's wise to invest our lives. In the ESV Study Bible, it says this. It says, the lazy person is always too tired to work. Then his laziness becomes a more and more severe issue until he is in dire poverty. Now, poverty in the Bible is certainly not always caused by laziness. I like how Warren Wiersbe writes about this. This is what he says. Proverbs 19, he says this, some people become poor because they have wrong values, Proverbs 16:16, because they're lazy, that's here, Proverbs 10:4, 14:23. They follow sinful pleasures, Proverbs 21:17, Proverbs 23:21. They refuse good counsel, Proverbs 13:18. And they don't plan carefully, Proverbs 21:5. But there are some who are poor because they cannot help it. They may have been victims of injustice, Proverbs 22, verse 22 through 23. Or they have such heavy debts that they cannot succeed, Proverbs 22:7. And then he says this, he says, you should show mercy to the poor, Proverbs 14:21, 31, 19, 17, 21, 23. For the same Lord has made all of us, Proverbs 22:2. I like that because it reminds us that although poverty can be tied to laziness, not all poverty is because of laziness. Now, if you are in a place where you have the capacity to work, then it's good to be reminded to invest yourself, because a lazy person won't give even minimal effort, even when they're provided with a good opportunity. A lazy person will start a project and not finish it. That's what Proverbs 19:24 seems to indicate. And here are the evidences of laziness or a lack of investment: not giving a minimal effort, even when there's an opportunity, pretending you're not capable of something in order to avoid responsibility, and then starting something but not finishing it. Now, this proverb certainly doesn't deal with the motivation, just the assessment. Other proverbs deal with the motivation, but what this is pointing to for you and for me is that when we are not in control of our emotions, so we get agitated when we're not in control of our industry, so that we are not willing to push through difficulty, that then we are putting ourselves in harm's way. Toward the end of the chapter, there's this idea about scoffers and simple again, which has been part of the theme of Proverbs, verse 25. Strike a scoffer and the simple will learn prudence, reprove a man of understanding. So we can learn lessons from watching others, but The scoffers ultimately learn nothing, either for themselves or by watching others. The simple might learn by watching others. But he says that a man of understanding, verse 25, he will gain knowledge when he's reproved. So the question is, where today are you letting offense drive anger in your life? And are you willing to overlook it? And where have you been giving less effort than you could? And instead counting on magic thinking to bring about good results in your life? Maybe it's time to address one of those issues.
Thanks for joining us here today. There's a lot of great content to explore on Orchard Hill Plus and on the Orchard Hill main feed from the weekend. Have a great day.